Okay, so this this talk this morning is something that was kind of near and dear to me as far as my um, learning some of the peoples of the Bible and God's prominent figures and why He chose them, um, and the importance of understanding why He chose them. I think helps edify our search in the truth and understanding His plan and purpose. But mainly, it was for me intriguing. It was to understand the origin of the Arab race that influenced this. Just because, in the last goodness 30 years, Islam has been just thrust to the forefront of our daily news cycles. It has forced us, and understanding God's plan and purpose, rightly so, it does force us to pay attention to those things that are going on. And it made me go, hey, there's a lot of different people in this book that He has given us, and they're all related and trying to come about as to where these people came from, and how it related to God's plan and purpose. So, um, is this a first principles talk? I think that's something that as I go through this material and that that needs to be answered by yourself, if you think it's important enough. But as far as those principles that we have that Christadelphians believe and teach, is it actually written down? I don't believe it is. But I mean, there are some facets in there of what we're going to cover today that elude to why maybe this should be included. And this is also kind of to give a revisitation to those things that a lot of us that understand it now, we're more mature in our tenure, in our walk, and understanding God's plan and purpose and His inspired word. But I think it's also good for the younger folks and those that are coming in from the outside to understand how important it is to know this genealogy and to know who these people are. So, to get started, let's turn to Genesis chapter 16. Genesis 16, verses 1 through 4. And just to kind of, before we get started in reading this, just to let you know what we're going to be covering are the sons of Noah, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. We'll be covering the sons of Abraham, Ishmael, and Isaac. And finally, the sons of Isaac, Jacob, and Esau. And there's a lot here that I'm not going to cover because these three subjects are these three groups of people. There's so much in there, but this is basically what I tried to do was target um, the initial point of this is why they were chosen and this is why they weren't, and this is what caused it. So, starting in Genesis chapter 16, verses 1 through 4. Now Sarai, Abram's wife, bare him no children, and she had an handmaid, an Egyptian, whose name was Hagar. And Sarai said unto Abram, Behold, now the Lord hath restrained me from bearing. I pray thee, go in unto my maid. It may be that I may obtain children by her. And Abram hearkened to the voice of Sarah. And Sarai, Abram's wife, took Hagar, her maid, the Egyptian, after Abram had dwelt 10 years in the land of Canaan, and gave her husband Abram to be his wife. And he went in into Hagar, and she conceived. And when she saw that she had conceived, her mistress was despised in her eyes. Now, I want you to turn forward to chapter 17. We're going to read verses 1 through 21. And when Abram was 90 years old and 9, the Lord appeared unto Abram and said unto him, I am the Almighty God. Walk before me, and be thou perfect. And I will make my covenant between me and thee, and will multiply thee exceedingly. And Abram fell on his face, and God talked with him, saying, As for me, behold, my covenant is with thee, and thou shalt be a father of many nations. Neither shall my name any more be called, shall thy name any more be called Abram, but thy name shall be Abraham, for I, a father of many nations, have I made thee. And I will make thee exceedingly fruitful, and I will make nations of thee, and kings shall come out of thee. And I will establish my covenant between me and thy seed after thee in their generations for an everlasting covenant, to be a God unto thee and to thy seed after thee. And I will give unto thee and to thy seed after thee the land wherein thou art a stranger, all the land of Canaan, for an everlasting possession, and I will be their God. And God said unto Abraham, Thou shalt keep my covenant, therefore thou and thy seed after thee in their generations. This is my covenant which ye shall keep between me and you, and thy seed after thee, every man child among you shall be circumcised. And ye shall circumcise the flesh of your foreskin, and it shall be a token of the covenant betwixt me and you. And he that is 8 days old shall be circumcised among you, every man child in your generations. He that is born in the house or bought with money of any stranger, which is not of thy seed. He that is born in thine house, and he that is bought with thy money, must needs be circumcised. And my covenant shall be in your flesh for an everlasting covenant. And the uncircumcised man child, whose flesh of his foreskin is not circumcised, that shall be cut off from his people. He hath broken my covenant. And God said unto Abraham, As for Sarah thy wife, thou shalt not call her Sarai any, but Sarah shall her name be. And I will bless her, and give thee a son also of her. Yea, I will bless her, and she shall be a mother of nations, kings of people shall be of her. Then Abraham fell upon his face and laughed, and said in his heart, Shall a child be born unto him that is 100 years old? And Sarah, that is 90 years old, bare. And Abraham said unto God, Oh, that Ishmael might live before thee. And God said, Sarah, thy wife, shall bear thee a son indeed. And thou shalt call his name Isaac, and I will establish my covenant with him for an everlasting covenant, and with his seed after him. And as for Ishmael, I have heard thee. Behold, I have blessed him, and will make him fruitful, and will multiply him exceedingly. 12 princes shall he beget, and I will make him a great nation. But my covenant will I establish with Isaac, which Sarah shall bear unto thee at this set time in the next year. So, starting with these sons of Abraham, because that's kind of where I found the answer to my question, as far as the origin of the Arab race. We read in chapter 16 that Sarai, bare Abram no children, and that it was a marital custom in that day that his wife was obligated to give a concubine unto the husband, that they may conceive and bear a son, which by law of the land would be recognized as the legitimate child of the married couple, therefore creating an heir to the birthright. I want to focus in detail on what happened, though, during the accounts of Ishmael and Isaac being born. So first, Ishmael, he was born of an Egyptian handmaid, Hagar, and Keturah as well. He had offspring with her as well. When Hagar conceived, she treated Sarah with such insolence to the point where Sarah, having no choice, and Hagar being her slave, made life so hard for her and drove Hagar out. The Lord appeared to Hagar in the wilderness, and at his behest she returned to Sarah and submitted herself to her. I believe that Hagar's insolence against the wife of Abraham was kind of partially to blame, so I believe that Ishmael was kind of, when Isaac was born, would kind of make fun of Isaac. But you can imagine that tension there. And Sarah, again, she was very, miscontent. Now that she knew, oh, she's going to bear this son and be an heir, it was through someone else other than myself. But I believe it was that insolence that was partially to blame for her and Ishmael's banishment. and the troubles that ensued thereafter. Abraham loved Ishmael, so much that he prayed to God that Ishmael might live before him, but the Lord wouldn't have it. It was here that the Lord stated that Sarah, or Sarai at the time, would have a child. The child's name would be Isaac, and that he would establish his covenant with him and not Ishmael. So why would God not recognize the legitimacy of Ishmael's birth? So there was a difference in Abraham from the time that Ishmael was born and the time that Isaac was born. First, it would make sense that God would not recognize Ishmael's legitimacy over Isaac's, for God is not confined by the customs of mankind, those customs that were prevalent where Abraham came from. But yet he still blesses Ishmael with 12 nations, or 12 princes, which is where our Arab nations come from. Number two, second, it would also make sense that God would recognize the marriage of Abram and Sarai and the conception of Isaac rather than the conception of Ishmael out of wedlock. That's kind of a no-brainer. Third and foremost, Abraham was Abram at the time which God commanded him to rise and walk and be thou perfect before him. This is when the covenant was formed between God and Abraham and his seed. Ishmael was about 13 when Abram was called before the Lord, as we read in Genesis 17, 1 through 7. However, you cannot overlook the role of the women. So turn to Galatians chapter 4. Galatians 4, we're going to read 19 to the end of the chapter, and then chapter 5, verse 1. Starting at 4:19, and there's Paul, he's writing, he says, "My little children, of whom I travail in birth again, until Christ be formed in you. I desire to be present with you now, and to change my voice, for I stand in doubt of you. Tell me, ye that desire to be under the law, do ye not hear the law? For it is written that Abraham had two sons, the one by a bondmaid, the other by a free woman. But he who was of the bondwoman was born after the flesh. But he of the free woman was by promise. Which things are an an allegory. For these are the two covenants. The one from the Mount Sinai, which gendereth to bondage, which is Hagar. For this Hagar is Mount Sinai in Arabia, and answereth to Jerusalem, which now is, and is in bondage with her children. But Jerusalem, which is above, is free, which is the mother of us all. For it is written, Rejoice, thou barren that bearest not, break forth and cry, that thou travailest not, for the desolate hath many more children than she which hath an husband. Now we, brethren of Isaac, was the children of promise. But as then he that was born after the flesh persecuted him that was born after the Spirit, even so it is now. Nevertheless, what saith the Scripture? Cast out the bondwoman and her son, for the son of the bondwoman shall not be heir with the son of the free woman. So then, brethren, we are not children of the bondwoman, but of the free. Stand fast, therefore, in liberty wherewith Christ hath made us free, and be not entangled again with the yoke of bondage." Hagar represents the old covenant and Sarah the new. The rivalry of Ishmael and Isaac foreshadows the conflict in the early ecclesias between those who would cling to the ordinances of the law, which must pass away, and those who realize that through the grace of covenant and Christ, of a covenant in Christ, there is freedom from the law. Sarah was Abraham's wife, whom he took from his father's second wife. She was his half sister. It was common in the Chaldees that the marriage of a distant family member would take place. It also shed some light on how Abraham was able to perhaps pass her off to kings and rulers that she was his sister when they were in Egypt. Fourth, Hagar was an Egyptian, which in a second here we're going to find out why, being from the lineage of the Egyptians, is going to have an adverse effect on their future. And then five, here's something that's it's so small, and we've read it multiple times, but there's another little message here. Look at Genesis chapter 22. Genesis chapter 22. Let's read 11 and 12. And the angel of the Lord called unto Abraham out of heaven, and said, Abraham, Abraham. And he said, Here am I. And he said, Lay not thine hand upon thy lad, neither do thou anything unto him. For now I know that thou fearest God, seeing that thou hast not withheld thy son, thy only son, from me. So one of the things in that last passage, when he says, Seeing thou hast not withheld thy son, thine only son, from me, God is recognizing and putting his stamp on the covenant that he made with Abraham and Isaac, and that it would not go through Ishmael. So, I mean, God is literally, he's saying it there in black and white. This is thine only son. And we have to remember that. You know, God says this is the one. Here's your only son, the one I recognize. So moving away from Abraham, Ishmael, and Isaac, we're going to backtrack, and we're going to go over the sons of Noah. So turn back to Genesis chapter 9. And I'm going to read just a real quick so everybody knows where it's at in Genesis 5, 31 and 32. And all the days of Lamech were 770 and 7 years old, and he died. And Noah was 500 years old, and Noah begat Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And then we're going to fast forward to flip over to Genesis 9. Reading verses 18 through 29. And the sons of Noah that went forth of the ark were Shem and Ham and Japheth. And Ham is the father of Canaan. These are the three sons of Noah, and of them was the whole earth overspread. And Noah began to be an husbandman, and he planted a vineyard, and he drank of the wine and was drunken. And when he was uncovered within his tent, and Ham, the father of Canaan, saw the nakedness of his father, and told his two brethren without. And Shem and Japheth took a garment and laid it upon both their shoulders, and went backward and covered the nakedness of their father, and their faces were backward, and they saw not the nakedness, their father's nakedness. And Noah awoke from his wine and knew what his younger son had done unto him. And he said, Cursed be Canaan, a servant of servants shall he be unto his brethren. And he said, Blessed be the Lord of God of Shem, and Canaan shall be his servant. God shall enlarge Japheth, and he shall dwell in the tents of Shem, and Canaan shall be his servant. And Noah lived after the flood 350 years, and all the days of Noah were 950 years, and he died. So, as we read here, something happened to Noah through these passages that compelled him to be blessing and cursing with this event that came about. And this is apparently, I mean, it's a pretty big event because we're reading about it. It's been written. So there's a lesson here to be lifted. Um, the Bible does not clearly state exactly what happened, but given the fact that Noah knew what his son had done unto him, leaves little doubt that some sort of lewd, sexual, perversive act was committed by Ham. And Noah was drunk, he was passed out, and when he awoke, he knew what his son had done unto him. Now, there's also, well, did he just look upon him? Well, I have to reach beyond that just a little bit, because if you're sleeping and you're passed out and somebody just looks at you, you don't know, somebody look at me? I don't know if somebody saw me, you know, unless, Ham and or Shem and Japheth went and told him, "Hey, we're the ones that covered you up, by the way." But Noah, when he woke, knew something in what had Ham had done to him. So there was a propensity here for Ham to be mischievous, or maybe be a little odd, or whatever the case was. There was a propensity here for that. That was part of his character, forcing Noah to curse him and Canaan, and also bless Shem, and then also Japheth would partake in the tents of Shem, and that Canaan would serve them both. So Shem, going back to Noah really quick here, when it talks about him being a husbandman, that means that you are a tiller of the ground, or a farmer. And just kind of for a little reference to that, turn over to John. Let me see, was that John? Can't read my own writing here. John 15. John 15, 1 through 6. I am the true vine, and my Father is the husbandman. Every branch in me that beareth not fruit, he taketh away, and every branch that beareth fruit, he purgeth it, that it may bring forth more fruit. Now ye are clean through the word which I have spoken unto you. Abide in me, and I in you. As the branch cannot bear fruit of itself, except it abide in the vine, no more can ye, except ye abide in me. I am the vine, ye are the branches. He that abideth in me, and I in him, that same bringeth forth much fruit. Or without me, you can do nothing. If a man abide not in me, he is cast forth as a branch and is withered, and men gather them and cast them into the fire, and they are burned. So that just kind of gives you a foreshadowing of Christ there, and being the true vine, and how we need to tend to our vineyards, and why it's important to tend to those vineyards. So moving on, let's start with Shem. He's the middle of the three, having received the birthright, was priest and king of the earth during the initial post-flood times. He resided in an area which is now modern Jerusalem. He is probably, without a doubt, the progenitor of what we consider to be the Jews of today. There's also overwhelming evidence that he and Melchizedek are one and the same. Melchizedek resided in the city of Salem, and it's not hard to reach when you think of Jerusalem is the city of the Jews, and Jerusalem. I mean, it's not hard to put those together, and 1 and plus 1 is 2 there. Japheth, the oldest, headed north and was the progenitor of the more remote northern peoples of southeastern Europe. He had 7 sons whose descendants occupied the isles of the Gentiles, the Hellenes, or the Greeks. An area included the Asia Minor and Upper Greece. We are considered to be the descendants of Japheth. Now to Ham and Canaan, which is, when I first went over Ishmael and Isaac, and Hagar and being an Egyptian and where she came from, and this is going to kind of tie that in. Ham and Canaan. Ham became the progenitor of the dark races, that being the Egyptians, the Ethiopians, the Libyans, and the Canaanites. It is the Egyptians, or the descendants of Mizraim, where I wanted to focus the most attention. They are the direct descendants of Ham. We got a couple references here in Psalms. Psalm 78:51. Go back to just 50 real quick. He made a way to his anger. He spared not their soul from death, but gave their life over to the pestilence, and smote all the firstborn in Egypt, the chief of their strength in the tabernacles of Ham. And then turn to Psalm 105. Verse 23. Israel also came into Egypt, and Jacob sojourned in the land of Ham. And then 106, verse 22. Wondrous works in the land of Ham, and the terrible things by the Red Sea. So you can kind of see why Ishmael right there cannot be, couldn't be, the lineage of Christ could not go through him in the promise and God's plan and purpose, because Hagar, being an Egyptian, was, of a condemned, or a condemned race. We're not condemned, but one that is cursed. So again, they're the direct descendants of Ham, the Egyptians. Hagar was an Egyptian. Ishmael, being of her seed, reaped the same curse as his mother, and her, the same curse that was bestowed upon Ham. Had God allied and established his covenant with Ishmael, the purity of the lineage of Christ would have been compromised. Isaac was the only legitimate child in which God could establish his covenant with. And then, of course, our last group, Jacob and Esau. Turn to Genesis chapter 25. Genesis 25, verses 29 through 34. And Jacob sowed pottage, and Esau from the field, and he was faint. And Esau said to Jacob, Feed me, I pray thee, that same red pottage, for I am faint. Therefore was his name called Edom. And Jacob said, Sell me this day thy birthright. And Esau said, Behold, I am at the point to die, and what profit shall this birthright do to me? And Jacob said, Swear to me this day. And he sware unto him, and he sold his birthright unto Jacob. Then Jacob gave Esau bread and pottage of lentils, and he did eat and drink, and rose up and went away. Thus Esau despised his birthright. So how do these two fit in that equation? Esau, being faint, probably have been afield for days hunting, because that's what he was. He was a cunning hunter. For days on end comes to Jacob asking for food and water. So he succumbs to the lust of the eyes and the flesh and the pride of life, despising his birthright, and gives in to Jacob's request. So in essence, he sold his birthright, gave it up, did not recognize the value of it for a bowl of soup to sustain himself with. And it has been said by many, even by Esau himself, that he had been tricked into giving up his birthright and blessing. Look at Genesis chapter 27, verse 36. And he said, Is it not rightly named? And he said, Is not he rightly named Jacob? For he has supplanted me these 2 times. He took away my birthright, and behold, now he hath taken away my blessing. And he said, hast thou not reserved a blessing for me? Isaac was the only one fooled here. Esau failed to recognize the capacity of his birthright and blessing until it was too late. Jacob, on the other hand, knew what these things entailed and was passionate about obtaining them. He was willing to risk his older brother attempting to kill him to acquire this birthright and this blessing. Not to mention the prophecy of the two nations that were fighting in the womb before Jacob and Esau were born. That the older would serve the younger. Jacob grabbing Esau's heel would later prove to be ironic that he would trip his elder brother up in life. So there is a connection with the other two groups. Look at Genesis chapter 28. We're there now, verses 1 through 9. And Isaac called Jacob and blessed him and charged him and said unto him, Thou shalt not take a wife of the daughters of Canaan. Arise, go to Padan-aram, to the house of Bethuel, thy mother's father, and take thee a wife from thence of the daughters of Laban, thy mother's brother. And God Almighty bless thee, and make thee fruitful, and multiply thee, that thou mayest be a multitude of people, and give thee the blessing of Abraham to thee, and to thy seed with thee, that thou mayest inherit the land wherein thou art a stranger, which God gave unto Abraham. And Isaac sent away Jacob, and he went to Padan-aram unto Laban, son of Bethuel, the Syrian, the brother of Rebekah, Jacob and Esau's mother. When Esau saw that Isaac had blessed Jacob, and sent him away to Padan-aram to take him a wife from thence, and that as he blessed him, he gave him a charge, saying, Thou shalt not take of a wife of the daughters of Canaan. And that Jacob obeyed his father and his mother, and was gone to Padan-aram. And Esau, seeing the daughters of Canaan pleased not Isaac his father, then went Esau to Ishmael, and took unto the wives which he had at Mahalath, the daughter of Ishmael, Abraham's son, the sister of Nebajoth, to be his wife. Jacob was commanded to go to Padan-aram, where he took to himself two of his uncle's Laban's daughters to wife, Leah and Rachel. Esau, having heard that the daughters of Canaan, or Ham, did not please Isaac, he immediately runs right to Ishmael, a more pure descendant of Ham, and takes of his daughters to wed, thus further defiling himself. It would appear that Esau couldn't make a right move or decision to save his life. The continuity of God's will is astounding when it is brought to the forefront, such as these occasions. It seems that no matter how many different aspects that you look from on any given account, the end result is the same. God's plan and purpose is the same. There is a beginning and then there is an end. Just as we are as creatures, as living souls. Of the dust we are, to the dust we shall return. Our processes are the same, no matter how you look at. When you look at when we're conceived, and then how we grow, and that this thing that's within us, this life force, our process is all the same. We breathe in and we exhale. We breathe in oxygen, we get rid of CO2. Our blood exchanges that. Our organs feed on vitamins and minerals and things of that nature, but it's all the same. Everybody's does kind of the same thing until there becomes a problem or a disease, and it alters that. But the ultimate path is that there's a beginning and there's an end. So the end result is still the same. Do we want to be a part of that better end result? A web of facts exists in Scripture that affords us the luxury of defining God's purpose. The focal point of the web being His will. How does this fit with God's will and His plan and purpose? How can I contribute to this? I have often compared laws and commandments to an algebraic equation. There's equality there. God has given himself a set of rules and confined himself with the plan and purpose that he has set forth for us to engage in, that we can, be a part of and help come to and witness the fruition of his plan and purpose. He's instilled a checks and balance system within his inspired word that proves he is the divine and the ultimate author of his will. It is evident that no man wrote this book of poems and stories of moral and social conduct. That is the Bible. And that's the Bible defined by the very liberal society in which we live. A book of poems and stories of moral and social conduct. People want to deny the Jews. They want to deny Judaism and God and Christ. And yet you see their history being written. You talk to somebody that doesn't believe and you say, well, do you know about the Roman Empire? You know about Alexander the Great? Do you know about Darius and Cyrus and Nebuchadnezzar, the Babylonian Empire, the Assyrian Empire? Do you know all these things? Oh yeah. Do you believe them to be true? Of course I do. Well, Israel and God's plan and purpose and the Jews are embedded within those cultures of civilizations, their writings, their history. And yet they want to deny them. So in conclusion, is this a first principles ideology, a first principles thing that we need to say, oh, this is first principles? Maybe, maybe not. I believe it to be integral in understanding what God has given us as the truth. It is important for us to have an intimate knowledge of chosen individuals and chosen peoples, and tells us why it could not be anyone else but those chosen individuals and those peoples. And it also helps us understand the other nations round about, where they came from and their relationship to his chosen lineage. Is it a first principle? That's up for debate. But I think it's important for us to apply this to our first principles as far as understanding the depth of our first principles as Christadelphians and why we believe and teach those things that we are vehement about, that are the truth and nothing but, and the way it is to be understood, that process of the way it is to be understood. So let us be passionate and vehement in our own walk after the Spirit as we approach the table to partake of the emblems of Christ's sacrifice. Thank you.